I'm your host, Nancy Trader. Welcome to the Stop Digging podcast, where we'll help you dig out of whatever hole you're in. Here, you can connect with experts to listen and learn from their experience and get advice for your challenges in business, wellness organizations, and relationships. Here, you can borrow from others and find what you need to create the life and work you want.
Hi, welcome to Stop Digging podcast. This is Susan, and I'm hosting today. And I'm excited about our guest today. We're in the middle of our 2025 podcast theme called Global Works. And we're talking with people and companies that work either holistically or internationally. And we have somebody today who's addressing an issue that may be a little bit hidden, but let me tell you a little bit more about it because it really focuses on people in life who are already successful but are unhappy. And our nonprofit, A² Lamp Groups, we work with a lot of people who are looking for that life work, that meaningful work, that new job, that spark that brings them to where they want to be, doing what they love. And yet there's a whole group of people who are already doing that and are still unhappy and maybe even feel guilty about it. So we have somebody here today who's going to unpack that and explain and walk people through some of the things that they can do to really reconnect with themselves and become happier in their work. So let me share a few statistics with you. According to Bamboo HR, and these are statistics from 2024, employee happiness has been steadily declining since 2020. And 2024 received a score of 35 out of 100 in happiness, people that are working and happy. The highest happiness scores are in companies with less than 75 employees, but also unhappy workers, according to one CNN report, unhappy workers reduce the GDP globally by about 9%. And they also note that stress and loneliness are on the rise, with their numbers being about 41% and 20% respectively, and that's global. We're also looking at entrepreneurs because our guest today is a consummate entrepreneur. In fact, she's a serial entrepreneur, and we love entrepreneurs at A² Lamp Groups. And so let me tell you some startling statistics about entrepreneurs. According to the Founders Report, 87.7% of entrepreneurs who report being satisfied in their work also say that they struggle with mental health issues, such as 50.2% report high anxiety, 36.4% report high burnout, 45.8% high stress, 39.2% financial worries, 31.7% imposter syndrome, 26.9% poor work-life balance, 26.9% loneliness, 21.6% insomnia and sleep disorders, and that is huge. Your well-being as an entrepreneur is crucial because you are your business. So we also know from A² Lamp Group's work with coaching and assessments and leadership development and worker development that the best predictor for success is emotional intelligence. But even in emotional intelligence, you can be really high in emotional intelligence, but there's what's called a happy or a well-being quadrant. And it's comprised of 4 of the components of emotional intelligence that, when they're in balance, indicate happiness. So you can always work on your happiness. It is not an elusive, magical thing. We are excited because today we have a guest who did the work, and she's written a book about it. And let me tell you a little bit more about her. Her name is Betsy Pepine, and she is a best-selling author, speaker, and, as I said, a serial entrepreneur. She works in real estate, and she has a whole host of accolades. I'm telling you, this lady is completely professional, successful. She is the kind of female mentor that women everywhere would crave. She's passionate about helping at-risk families and children. She founded a charity to help them with their housing. She mentors other people. Her own mentor is Barbara Corcoran from the Shark Tank. and she has degrees and just talent everywhere. So, first of all, let's welcome Betsy Pepine. Hi,
Thank you so much.
Betsy.
Hi, how are you, Susan?
I'm great. I'm so happy that you're here. I'm excited to have this conversation because we always talk about developing people to get them to go from failure to success. But when you're already successful and you're unhappy,
Mhm.
my gosh, what do you do with that?
That's the journey I've been on for the last couple of years. I think that I made the assumption that being successful equaled happiness, but that's not necessarily so.
You have a number of businesses, so it's not like you were sitting around being unhappy. We think that people, when they're unhappy, they just close down and strategize, but you've been busy. You
Mhm.
have a real estate company, a title company, a charity, and what else do you have?
I've got a property management company. We have a real estate school. I had a mortgage company, but I did recently close that. So yeah, I have several companies and the nonprofit. It definitely keeps me busy. That busyness was not my problem.
Yeah. How did you know that you were unhappy? It sounds like you're so busy. Like, how did you even know that you were unhappy?
I could just feel it in my body that something was misaligned. And my daughters were leaving the nest. And I think there comes a point in time maybe that we do evaluate our lives and we recognize that life is short, especially when your kids leave the nest. You're think a lot of the milestones that we have in life are done by the time the kids leave the nest. So many of our milestones as humans are packed into the first 50 years of our life. I just felt this pressure, like time was running out and I wasn't happy with where I was and half my life is over. And so I didn't admit it to myself for quite some time because I didn't feel like I had the right to be unhappy. I see a lot in this world and I know I'm very blessed in most ways. And so for me to even, say that I'm unhappy felt almost irresponsible and just like ungrateful for what I had in my life. So that I struggled with for quite some time, but I did realize I didn't want to continue on the path that I was at without seeking more exploration as to why this might be. So I began a journey of
Yeah.
exploring what my source of unhappiness was.
That's powerful what you said right there. Is that sometimes, when you're successful or you're blessed or there's a huge push to feel grateful for what you have because, they're starving elsewhere or whatever that looks like, there's an inherent guilt
Mhm,
that like, why should I want more?
mhm,
How
mhm,
did you deal with that? That's a tough one. I work with leaders and execs and new execs all the time when when you're working your way up the ladder, it aspiration is really the governing thing. But if
mhm,
you're already at the top, how do you deal with those kinds of things? I
mhm,
earn more than other people. I'm not happy and I
mhm,
should be.
mhm. Yeah, and I think for me, it was recognizing that I always had this desire, like I wasn't enjoying the journey. I was really focusing on the destination. And once I hit the destination, the goal, the milestone, whatever it was I had my eye on, then it was okay, what's next? And then it was what's next. And it's like, when is enough in terms of enough business, enough money, enough social connection, enough material items, enough travel. And I think it's hard, especially in the culture that we live in, just pushing more and more. And it's like, isn't it okay just to feel like I have enough, I am enough? So I think that's what I was struggling with and feeling like I was living. And that's why I wrote that book, The Breaking Boxes, dismantling the metaphorical boxes that bind us, because I felt like I was feeling this pressure from all these external sources and in myself, feeling it
Mhm.
from myself as well. And I just wanted to break free from those.
I hear what your story is. And, so much of that is when you're trying to prove something,
Hmm.
but you're still seeking meaning.
Hmm.
So there's always rationales why we need to get to the next goal. It's like there's a level of growth.
Hmm.
And it sounds like the way you defined growth changed.
And I still struggle with that piece because I have such a growth mindset. It's one of the core values in all of our companies. I feel most alive when I'm growing, and I'm only growing when I'm doing something either new or puts me outside my comfort zone. So that does require usually more, not more, but different. And that's never ending, because once you've done something, then it's okay, I've done that. What's next? So I recognize that. But I think for me personally, it was also a measure of worth. And that I don't like. And that's what I've been working on and still work on, is that I don't have to, no one has to achieve to be of value. And I think that's where the disconnect for me was mainly.
When you were stuck in that cycle, did you
Mhm.
get a sense of value when you were doing these things?
Yeah, yes, for sure. And I definitely have always, my whole goal in life is to improve and empower the lives of others. And there was tremendous, and there still is tremendous satisfaction in helping others and seeing them do things and achieve things that you feel like you were an integral part of. And maybe that's also very self-serving. You feel like you did something great for somebody else, and it does feel great. So that piece is very nice, but also just recognizing that it's okay not to feel the pressure to have to always strive for something greater than what you've already done to feel worthy.
One thing that I'm hearing from you that is interesting to me too is people who are smart, entrepreneurial, tend to be intellectual, strategic thinkers. And so much of your conversation, just even in the get go, has been about feelings. And when I'm coaching executives or new leaders or people like at the top with aspirations, trying to think your way through things is
Mhm.
not the same as feeling your way through things. So
Mhm.
much of what you're saying is so true that you can't unfeel things and put them
Mhm.
in a box. And we're
Mhm.
going to go back to your book there,
Mhm.
because if you put your emotions in a box to be professional or to be strategic, you're missing a whole set of data
Mhm.
that makes you more powerful. And so much of your story, I want to hear more about your journey too. Like what you talked about, what set it off, but keep going.
This is all fairly recent. I'm 56. And so I would say the last 6 or 7 years, for the first 50 years, I was not in touch with my feelings at all. I was raised in a home, a great home, great parents, but they were raised in homes that didn't validate feelings and emotion. And so I was raised in a very cerebral home. It was always, Betsy, what do you think? I've never to this day been asked, Betsy, how do you feel? Ever been asked that by anybody in
Mhm.
my family of origin. It's just not in our vocabulary. In fact, if anything, the messaging was feelings are fleeting, they're irrational, they're wrong, you should be ashamed of them. Go to your room when you're feeling bad about something. It was very shame based to even express them. And what I've learned is that your body tells you before your mind, and even whatever part of the brain, I don't really remember what it is, maybe the limbic part of the brain, it feels it first, and then it gets to your amygdala, whatever that part,
The frontal part
the
is
frontal cortex, right?
correct.
Your body processes it first, but I was so conditioned to just totally bypass that and not trust that, to the point where I didn't even feel it anymore. Or I think I also felt like I had a very high tolerance for pain. I was numb to it, and then it would just go to my thinking. And that, I think, can lead, then you start having symptoms of things in your body when you ignore those feelings for 50 years. So I've been on this journey. I remember when I went into therapy, the first day of therapy, my therapist was like, Betsy, how do you feel? I said, I feel good. And she's like, well, what other emotions do you feel? And I said, well, sometimes I feel bad. And she's like, great. She's like, and what other feelings? And I was at a total loss of words. I'm like,
Right.
what do you mean? I'm thinking it's a trick question. And so she printed out a feelings wheel for me. It's like a color wheel, but
Yeah.
it's a feelings wheel. Like, I had never seen that. I felt like I was in kindergarten. I'm like, why don't they teach kids this? I mean, maybe they do now. I don't think so,
Mm.
but I was certainly not taught that. So it's just been a whole discovery for me of this whole range of emotions that we feel. And the biggest part for me is learning to trust them. I do such a great job now. It's still a work in progress, but now I recognize the feelings and I do trust them. Whereas before I would never, even if the data doesn't tell me, I trust my feelings more than the data. 10 years ago, that would have been unheard of in my life.
So much of your story resonates with me because I did the same thing. And some of it might be our age, working women
Mhm.
coming through in the workforce, 70s, 80s, we were told to not be emotional, right? You had to be professional. So it was like the deadpan face. You couldn't react to anything
Yeah.
because you didn't want to be accused of being hysterical or irrational or whatever. You had this persona you had to do. And yet now here we are catching up, men and women in the workplace, realizing that yes, we have to control the appropriateness of our emotional expression, but you still have to feel them and include them in what you're doing. And if you've never learned how to do that, emotional processing can be excruciating.
Mhm.
If you can't even name the emotion in real time, how can you process it? I was like you. I use the feelings wheel all the time. In fact, just last week I'm helping a man launch his business, and he's a very strategic, and he's trying to rebrand and create a brand, and I'm like, brands are about feelings. What are your
Mhm.
feelings? And he could not come up with them.
Yeah.
And so his homework was to take that feelings wheel and start keeping a diary every time he feels something, try to
Mhm.
figure out what it is. And I felt the same way. I was like, my gosh, I didn't even start doing that until I was in my 40s.
Mhm.
And I thought, why am I learning this? What everybody else learned it when they were like 18 months old. I'm like an adult child. I
I know.
don't
I know.
understand.
I know.
It's
There's a great
crazy.
Are you aware of the app, How We Feel?
I've heard of it. I haven't used it, but
It's
tell me,
great.
is that
It's a free app, and I have it on my phone, and you can set it so it checks in with you with however frequency you want throughout the day. It'll vibrate, and then bubbles will come up, all these different bubbles in different colors. So you have good bubbles, bad bubbles, how you're
right?
feeling, all these different bubbles. You pick the bubble that describes how you're feeling, and then you can type in the setting that you're in, what you're doing, and who you're with, and it starts tracking your trends so you can see what environments and people and situations make you feel good versus bad and the nuances of it. So that's a great, you were talking about
I
your
love
client.
that. Anytime that we have a safe place where we can experiment, that's the
Mhm.
best place to learn. As adults, those places become fewer and fewer
Mhm.
because there's
Yeah.
so much at risk. How do you go through an exploration when you're running 4 companies? There's a little bit of tolerance about how you change in front of each set of people. I'm not sure. In fact, actually, that's a curiosity question. How did you manage it when you're going through all of this stuff and you're still having to do all of the business stuff? What did that change how you were doing business?
I think it definitely I've always been very value based, and the companies have this they're all like under an umbrella, and they have the similar values. And so I've always been attuned to that and making sure that we live our values and we hire by them, we rehome by them. So that I was aware of. I think I'm definitely much more sensitive to other people who I may have deemed very emotional, too emotional in the past. And now I admire their ability to express their emotions. So I think it's helped me as a leader. And I think it's also made me more approachable, especially to the younger generations who seem more in touch with their feelings than people in my generation.
So just by learning that skill for yourself and
Mhm.
your own well-being, now that you know what your feelings are and are learning to process them, you're more able to help and hear other
Your
people
other
when they're in the process of processing their emotions. So maybe before you would have maybe
Mhm.
been uncomfortable and
Mhm.
let's talk about that another time or offline,
Yeah.
not in the meeting.
Right.
Come to my office later or things like that where when we're uncomfortable, we want to sideline it and
Right.
control it. How many of us would want a boss or a leader to hear what we have to say without creating a controlled situation where you feel a little bit manipulated and maybe unsafe? Like,
Mhm.
who wants to go into their boss's office to share feelings that their boss wasn't comfortable enough in the meeting?
Right. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? That's like being called to the principal's office. It feels punitive maybe.
Yeah.
But also it allows the leader like yourself to be able to hire people that are more diverse.
Mhm.
So tell me, what is there a feeling that was harder to distinguish than the others?
I don't think so. I think the nuances of them. I wasn't used to. In fact, I bought Atlas of the Heart, Brene Brown's book. That's a great
Mhm.
book because it's like an encyclopedia of feelings, and that was eye-opening to me too, because I didn't understand the nuances of the different emotions. And also, I think what was not so much difficult, but enlightening was understanding that there are not good and bad emotions. That's something that was definitely different than what I was raised to believe. And so that was very freeing to know that it's okay to feel them and to process them.
When we say process feelings, some people who maybe where we were don't know what that means. What do you mean to process a feeling?
For me, it's to embrace it because in the past I would ignore it, I would minimize it. I would also get down on myself, thinking that there was something wrong with me or I'm somehow different or less than or unreasonable or some kind of negative characteristic because I had this feeling. But now I don't feel that way. Occasionally I'll still get down on myself, but for the most part, I don't do that anymore. I accept it and I embrace it because it's like the uninvited guest who pesters you until they're invited. So I feel like as long as you accept it and embrace it, then it has the safety to process your body to process it and dissipate versus lingering in a harmful way in your body. It's acknowledging it, it's naming it, it's accepting it. I journal about it. I give myself whatever I need in terms of time or space or however I best need to adjust to that. And it's okay. And feeling okay about it, expressing it to people if I feel I need to. A lot of times I don't. I just need to process it myself. So that's what I mean by process it versus just ignoring it, pretending it's not there and waiting for it to resurface again.
I love the way you describe that because so much of what you've been talking about is a journey where you're empowering yourself. And you have described a couple of times where the lack of emotional processing has caused physical issues with
Mhm.
you. And what kinds of issues would people experience? If we have a listening audience who is maybe experiencing some of these symptoms, they might maybe think, maybe I need to explore this issue a little bit more.
I have physical pain, and I think that it can show up as physical pain in your body. I don't know the science behind it. I believe that. I've read about it. I don't think that's even disputed anymore. There's a great book, The Body Keeps the Score, and it seems like it's going to manifest in some way. So for me, it's sleep disturbance, physical pain. For me, it particularly for some reason, it's in my back, lower back pain, actually all up my back, but also lower back. And then just physically feeling just off. But to the point where it's like you're used to it. You're not even aware. I don't know. For me, I got used to feeling in a lower quality of health, not feeling myself, not feeling my, I think your steady state. To me, my steady state was low, like lower, deflated than perhaps others that process things better.
Hello, friends. Thanks for listening. A Squared Lamp Groups powers this podcast. Their memberships are tax-deductible donations that directly support their work developing people and organizations. But just for you, they're offering podcast listeners a special 40% off coupon code to join. Your benefits as a member include additional resources, perks, and access that you can use all year, including an additional 30 minutes of bonus podcast content for every episode. Simply use the code 4listeners at checkout. That's the number 4, all caps, listeners at checkout. They also are giving our listeners free gifts to use now. Go to their website, asquaredlamps.org/podcast, and download your free My Success Course of Action worksheet. There is no cost, registration, or sales pitch involved. Just click it and save. Use it to work on something significant to you this month, maybe even something that sparks interest from today's podcast. Then click to join our free but private Stop Digging Podcast LinkedIn group, where the conversation continues between you, the hosts, and our guests. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with your friends. And now, back to the program.
Was it hard for you to envision being healthy since it was so normalized for you?
No, it wasn't hard for me because I feel like I have people in my life that do that, and I see their lives. And so I did feel like I wouldn't say they were mentors, but I definitely could see a different path and what that would result in.
So
I
seeing
remember,
others not experiencing what you were experiencing made you think, oh,
yeah,
what are they doing that I'm not?
right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. So sometimes aspiration, so much of that is seeing something that you want
Hmm.
and trying to determine whether it's something
Hmm.
you can get.
You're right.
So, any listener out there, if you're listening to her story here and you get her book and read her book, let that aspiration plant. Maybe some of these symptoms that people around you might be telling you is age or normal or just you're lucky because other people don't. I explore it a little further for yourself. There may be other issues at play that you're not even aware of
Hmm.
because you don't know what you don't know.
Hmm.
And when you did touch a little bit on one of the boxes that you broke out of, which, and you can explain a little bit more about that, but your book is called Breaking Boxes,
Hmm.
Dismantling the Metaphoric Boxes That Bind Us. So you talked about your birth family, a box of emotional expectation or parameters that was set for you that you needed to reevaluate. Tell our listeners some of the other boxes and what you had to do to get out of them. What got you in them and how do you get out of them?
I've come across a lot of boxes, some familial. I had to come from a family where everyone is a physician. I have two sisters. My dad's a physician. We grew up working in the hospital alongside him. There was just an expectation we would all be pre-med, we would all go to med school and all be physicians. And my sisters did that. And I was pre-med, and in college, junior year, I had to call my parents and just tell them I cannot continue to do this. This is just not for me. That was just a huge undertaking emotionally for me because my status in the family got knocked down several tiers because it was a status thing. It was like, this is the mentality was that everybody wanted to be a physician. So of course you would do it if you could. And if you're not a physician, something must be wrong for you not to want to be.
They assumed that you gave up on plan A.
Oh yeah.
Anything else that you did was always going to be plans B, C, D.
Yeah. The message was that, and my parents were great. They wanted what was best for their children. And in their generation, maybe that was the case, but they thought that either, and if I didn't want to be a physician, then the other two options in their mind would be an attorney or an engineer. I'm not sure why, but those were the three kind of noble professions that could also earn you a good living. And I didn't want to be any of those.
That's important to note what you just said right there, because not all the boxes that people put you in or that we accept are done out of malice. Sometimes
Oh,
they're
right.
done out of complete
Right.
love, concern,
Yeah.
well being, good intentions, and observation. Somebody may notice a talent that you have and think that you need to
Right.
do that. But
Right.
if that doesn't resonate with you, then it's not accurate. So even
Yeah.
if you have the talent, even if whatever that looks like. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing that you just said right there.
It's funny. I felt like the failure in my family. And I had an agent work for me once. And in her family, there was so much animosity towards her because she very much wanted to go to college. And her whole family thought that was terrible. Why do you feel like you need to go to college? You want to one up us, our family. We're not good enough for you. It
Yeah,
was so funny how just by the luck of the family, you could be viewed in one family as one way and in another family, complete opposite way. It's so interesting. I was talking to a guy the other day, and his family familial box that he really struggled with was everybody in his family, the firstborn son for four generations, you'd name them John. He was the fifth generation. He had a firstborn son, and he was going to break the tradition. And that caused tremendous discord in his family. And I was like, wow, that's one I've never had. Never in my family was non-issue. We don't
right.
have that expectation. So it's so interesting how our boxes can be important to us. And then somebody else, they don't even understand it because just doesn't even relate to them. So family of origin boxes, gender boxes for sure. My goodness, those are rampant. And men too. I think a lot of times when we say gender, we think, oh, the female. But I remember dating a gentleman who he was a single father, and we were watching a commercial on television, and it was a woman cleaning the kitchen and then mopping the floor and doing the traditional stereotypical female roles. And he was so offended by the commercial. And I thought it was because he was fairly progressive. He had 3 daughters. He didn't want his daughters to see that and think that's what they should aspire to. That's what I assumed. He was upset because he doesn't see people like himself in those roles because he does that as a single dad. And he resents that the females get all the credit for doing everything in the house. And when he drops off his kids at school, the teacher asks if the mother has signed the permission slip. And he's like right there. And he's like,
Right.
I can't sign a permission slip. So it was so interesting that I had never thought of that.
I did note a huge difference. Domestic violence became really big in this country, and people always think it's always the women. And I happen to know of a man who was in that situation as a victim. There were no resources. The waiting list to get into a safe house was 6 months. 6 months. And I was astounded and shocked. There's so many, they didn't even have a brochure or a person to go to. And I thought, God, and then to think it's unmanly or he could get out of it. It's still the same mindset. It's still the same. So I completely resonate with those gender boxes.
Yeah.
When there's a box in existence, it keeps all of the solutions focused on one thing, and all other options are off the table. So yeah, completely agree with you on that. What are some other boxes?
Just on that same topic, a friend of mine, he was telling me that his brother's in his 50s. His brother never married, had just arranged 2 surrogates to have his babies. And he has 2 babies. And I was like, what? I'd never heard of that. Now I have probably 6 or 7 friends, women, who have done that and single. Never thought anything of it. But I never heard of a single guy, hiring a surrogate to have his children. And then I was upset with myself because I'm like, why did I have that reaction? It wasn't a negative reaction. I was just shocked because it was even hard for me to envision because I had never heard that, never seen that yet. And I feel like I'm pretty attuned to boxes. And here I am thinking, wow, that's interesting. But I was like, great. I thought that was wonderful.
But it's a curiosity thing because not all boxes are bad. So you can always get out of the box if you need to, if you know that it's there. If you don't know it's there, something like that kind of shows you and it sparks this curiosity. Oh, I guess that's possible. I mean, I wouldn't have thought so, but yeah, it's
like pretty much anything is possible. And we deem things as good or bad, acceptable or not. These are truly human constructs. I've got 2 dogs. They're not in boxes. They're not worried about being in the good dog box today. And am I going to fail at running after the squirrel? They don't have these mental constraints that we humans suffer from.
So yeah, so much of what we crave and need though is safety and security. And so boxes serve that purpose. Boxes aren't crates. Crates nail you into them. They're wood, they're solid, you can't get out. Boxes, I love that metaphor that you used for your books. And it is something that we use a lot in the English vernacular. Boxing in, getting out of the box, that sort of thing. But boxes are primarily cardboard. If you need to break out, I think back, we're of a generation, in case we have younger listeners, we didn't have all the devices that you had. So when somebody had a bunch of boxes, we built forts out of these boxes. The boxes themselves can be used for anything we want. We can break out of them, in them, we can use them, but they're there to help us make sense of our world. And you can't be completely boxless. But if you know that you can break out of those boxes, or that if they're not serving you or they've been placed on you, some of the boxes that you were describing that you needed to break out of were boxes that seemed like they were built out of expectations that others had for you that you
Mhm.
never really questioned.
Yeah,
You
that's true.
know, so
But I think it's not always that. It's not always that. It, it it could be a professional box, and the expectations and the everyone's shocked when they see a certain profession do something. I remember I had a girlfriend who was telling me she was going to a dinner club. She had to leave to go to a dinner party, and or it was a wine once a month. They meet at someone's house. They pick a country. You bring wine from the country, and you cook dishes from the country. So she had to leave to go to that, and I was like, "Oh, great! Who's hosting it this month?" And she said, "Father John." And I was like, "Father John, like at Queen of Peace Parish?" She's like, "Yeah." I had a hard time to wrap my head around that. And then I'm like, why? All I know about Father John is his profession. I don't know anything else about him. He loves wine, so he loves great food. I don't know, but I was surprised. And I only was surprised because I knew he was a priest. So I said, what am I saying to myself? What box did I put him in that in addition to what he does as a profession, I ascribed certain characteristics, good or bad, but with zero basis. And so I think
right.
that is the danger of boxes is once we slap a label on anything, there is a tendency to stop seeing it. We see the bigger, I relate it to in my book. When my children were very little, we would walk in these trails. I love nature, and I would always stop and show them the different trees and the different kinds of bark, the different leaves, the different shapes, the different colors. And they were so curious. And then as they got a little bit older, I would tell them, okay, this is a tree, right? And I remember the day when we're going on the walk and I stopped to do our normal thing. And my daughter Maria took my hand and said, "Come on, Mom, I know it's just a tree." And it's like you stop seeing the nuances once you have a label. And that's where I feel like the danger is that we assume, or I assume things once I know one small piece of something, and then we suddenly extrapolate it, and that must mean X when it means nothing other than that one item.
There's a great show. I don't even know if it's still on, but I used to use it a lot years ago with clients and people I was working with. And it was like a brain, something about the brain teaser or brain something. And they would do the whole show, each show would be an episode where they would show how the brain filters out things or sees what it is, whether
Mhm.
it's an illusion or an omission. And if something shows up when in an area where we think we know what it is, our brain will filter it out. So they showed pictures, two pictures and of a house and a yard and everything. And but in the pictures there were odd things in there. There was a chicken looking out of the window because they knew that this was a suburban house or whatever.
Mhm.
They didn't see the chicken.
Mhm.
Every like 100 people, they never saw the chicken. And it's just like we filter out because our brains can only process so much. So a lot of times our brains build these boxes to help us interpret our world so that it's not overtaxed,
Yeah.
so that when we're confronted with the chicken in the window, we're
Mm.
like, oh, that's odd. But so many times we have our boxes and what you were talking about, putting that like on the priest. If you had stayed in that box, you might have come to a conclusion that he's a bad priest. He's a bad Catholic or a Christian or whatever because that box.
Yeah.
So it's important that we challenge our
Mhm.
boxes a little bit or at least allow the chicken in the window because it keeps us from being ideologues,
Mhm.
from
Mhm.
putting labels on people that they don't deserve.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they don't deserve. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We still have to have some discernment. I think that your book could be hugely important to people, especially in this day and age when we have so much name calling
Mhm.
and putting with progressive, liberal,
Mhm.
conservative on the political realm or
Mm.
Christian, Muslim, Hindu,
Yeah.
whatever those other boxes are, we
Mhm.
can put that on other people and not be open to the idea that people are more than one thing.
Yeah.
So I love that. So let's go into your book right away because I've read it a couple of times. Let me read it again. You can get this book on any of your book
Yeah.
purchasing
Yeah.
site.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any major bookstore.
Yeah, and if you want to know more, a little bit more about it, you can go to her website, which is betsypepine.com. That's BetsyPepine.com. Or you can visit her pepinrealty.com if you want to know a little bit more about her professional work and some of her companies. And the name of her book is Breaking Boxes: Dismantling the Metaphoric Boxes That Bind Us. So let's say somebody wants to buy your book. What are they going to get? What's in your book?
The book is a collection of, it's story based, short chapters of different stories throughout my life of different, all boxes of all different types, and roughly grouped by before I even understood that boxes existed. And then in the middle, it's like I'm starting to be aware that, wait a minute, there are some boxes here that don't serve me. And then the last set of stories are clear examples of how I was aware and got out of them. And then interspersed with that is some tactics on how to get out of boxes yourself if you are feeling like you would like to exit a box that you're in currently.
Okay. We talked about a few of the boxes. Do you want to list maybe one or two more before we get into?
Once you are aware of them, they're everywhere. One that I've faced is, I remember I was newly single. I was divorced. I was 32 and divorced, and I had gone to a physician who wanted me to update my medical record intake form. And before my appointment, and I remember reading one of the first questions was marital status. And it was single, married, divorced, or widowed. And I have answered that question. At that time, I had answered that question numerous times before. I never really thought anything of it. When I got to that question, I could feel myself just utterly offended that this was being asked. And also wondering, why is this important? Because it clearly means something. Because why would you ask something that you don't need? So clearly they're using this information for something. And I knew the minute I checked a box and somebody read that, they would assume something other more than just my marital status. And it's like I was technically no longer married, so I was single. I have been married, so I was divorced. So I'm like, okay, do I check two boxes? How long do you have to wait after your divorce to deem yourself single again? It just seems crazy.
I'm with you on that. I always felt offended by that because I thought, if I was married or not married, would you just fix my knee better? Or
I didn't
because
turn.
I have the flu.
I didn't turn. I just
I'd like
didn't.
the married flu medicine, please. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I left it blank. But the other thing about being single, though, and I didn't know this until I was an adult, like an adult with kids, single, even to this day, when someone asks me if I'm married and I say, no, I'm single, it is as though it's a condition that they need to fix. It's never, oh, that's great. Oh, wow. Okay, let me see who I can set you up with. It's like this problem that needs solved.
It's equated to loneliness and they want to help. Good
Correct.
intentions, but
Yes, right.
misapplied.
Or it's like
Maybe, but
loneliness, or this is not right. This is
mm,
not the paradigm that is the acceptable one. And I'm perfect. I'm very happy. In fact, I've never been happier and more content in my life. I have more friends in my life than I've ever had in my entire life. I travel more. I go out more. But it's so funny that it's very consistent when people find out that I am single, this reaction.
do you find yourself creating a new language to keep yourself out of those boxes? Like, for example, in the paradigm that you just said, do you find yourself when people ask saying very happily single?
Or consciously
Or
so,
things like
or
that,
yeah,
to
yes,
qualify your language
right.
to stay out of other people's boxes.
Right. But I feel like that sounds defensive. But yes, I do say sometimes that, yes, I'm single consciously so, where it's intentional. So I read a national magazine, and I remember reading it one day and thinking something's not right. And I couldn't figure out what it was. And a couple hours later, I go back to the newspaper and read the business section again. This was only a couple of years ago. It was there was tons of different articles in the business section about different things from different writers. It wasn't all the same writer. In every article, when they introduced the female in the article, behind her name, in parentheses, was her age. Every time they mentioned a male in the article, there was no parentheses or age mentioned at all.
Ooh,
Every
that
single
just
article,
triggered me right there.
every single article
Oh,
from
goodness.
different writers. So I'm like thinking, how is that even possible? Because I've interviewed people. I've never asked them how old they are. All the different writers of the newspaper follow some format where they know to ask the females how old they are, or they at least Google it and see how old they are. Like, why is this
Who set the standard?
right? Who set the standard? So I emailed the editor and I said, this is unacceptable, especially in this day and age. This is
Right. Oh, yeah.
totally unacceptable. And I got a response back saying that he would look into it. Then I got an email back saying, you're right. I'm going to look into this policy. And I don't see that happening anymore. But I don't even understand what that was about. What in the world does
How
that
did that
matter?
serve anything? Yeah.
But in terms of age, especially with women, we see that in the media, in Hollywood, actors not being able to get roles. But a girlfriend of mine decided to go gray during COVID, and her hair was white. And then I saw her about a year ago, and she was the color of my hair, dark brunette. And I was like, what happened? And she said, oh my gosh. She said, I became invisible. She said, she runs a company. She said, my opinions didn't matter. I'd go to the store. People would ignore me. I couldn't get help. She could not believe the difference in the way people treated her based on the color of her hair.
And yeah, and there are ways of overcoming boxes, ageism, sexism, whatever the ism is, intentionally. But yeah, you're absolutely right. We can't control the boxes other people have, but sometimes we can use language, maybe superficial tactics
Mm-hmm.
to handle or reshape or at least challenge what people
Mm-hmm.
perceive,
Yeah.
because it's hard to get out of other people's boxes. So sometimes it's easier to be on the front end and to try to be strategic about that. Half of getting in and out of boxes is having some emotional resilience, being able to know what you're feeling, believe it, process it, use it in conjunction with other realities that you're aware of and information, and make better decisions that you can live with.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm assuming that your journey continues.
Oh,
But the first part of your journey is over and marked by this book and some of the strategies that you had tried to find. In your bio, you mentioned a lot of different things. You tried yoga, probably medical solutions, probably therapy, the guru self-help industry
mm-hmm.
stuff, and you landed on this, and it's been hugely successful for you. And you said it's in storybook form, like short stories that describe things. So your readers, I'm assuming, can read your stories and find pain points within themselves to
Right.
create their own stories and their own and understand their own boxes.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I support that hugely. Our nonprofit is all about personal and professional development and organizational development for growth. And there are real ways of developing that are solid and get you where you need to go. And sometimes you need to take the long way, do the work. So we wholeheartedly recommend that you read this book, look for those pain points. We have a self-directed LinkedIn group called Stop Digging, and we'd love to hear your story. If you read her book, if you listen to this podcast, if you hear any of our other podcasts, we'd like for you to really contemplate where you are and where you want to be and how you want to get there and share that. You never know what resource or story or person that you mention in your post can help somebody else and maybe inspire them to move forward. So look for our LinkedIn group, join that, share your story, read this book. Again, it is Breaking Boxes, Dismantling the Metaphoric Boxes That Bind Us. I want to thank Betsy for coming, and she's a busy lady, so giving us her time has been huge, and we appreciate that. If you're a member of A Squared, your donations support our work to help other people. And if you're a member, you also get a private bonus 30 minutes of content. And stick with us, because Betsy's going to stay with us and share some tools and some other offline things that she wants to just share with our members. So thank you so much, Betsy. And to our listening audience, thank you for being a Stop Digging podcast, community podcast listener. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Stop Digging podcast. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please like, subscribe, and share with a friend, and connect with us on our social media channels. This podcast is powered by asquaredlamps.org.